Welcome to Transforming Us podcast. I'm Jess.
And I'm Tamara. We're trauma-informed relationship coaches and old friends here to discuss common patterns and what leads us to paths of security.
You know, people are feeling overwhelmed and disconnected in their painful relationships, which often leads to mental health crises.
We want to share some new ideas and practices to help you cultivate curiosity, compassion, and to redeem the patterns in your relationships, starting with yourself.
Join us on this journey of transforming us. Grab a cup of coffee and let's dive in. Welcome back, friends. We are well into our series on Enneagram types and focusing on some of the attachment leanings with new guests, friends, professionals, the whole gamut. I'm so excited to share another friend of mine with you whom I met in the Enneagram and Marriage Collective. And we've probably known each other maybe 3 years. But Katy Beckham is a senior GIS analyst and biologist with 2 decades of experience in her field. Katy is also a creator and the host of We Are All Human podcast, an independent project she began in 2020 focused on deep, meaningful conversations around story, faith, and personal growth. Her work often explores the Enneagram as one lens for understanding core motivations and relationships. She is a certified Enneagram coach and has shared this work in leadership training and one-on-one conversations as part of her personal ministry and independent study. She also writes on Substack, where her writing and podcasting live as passion-driven projects. So Katy is a wife and a mom of 3 and lives in South Carolina. So welcome, Katy.
Thank you for having me, Jessie, and it's great to meet you and get to know you through the collective.
Yeah,
So,
I'm so excited that you were willing to come on because it's going to be really great just for all of the listeners who are 5s or love a 5 to hear the perspective and the inner workings of just the patterns that you've identified and learn to work with and grow and balance over the many years that you've worked with the Enneagram. So thanks for being here. Do you want to share anything else about your family or what's something that you've been enjoying lately or looking forward to?
well, I'm 46 years old, just for context. I am a native South Carolinian. Besides the passions that Jessie already noted, I love exploring my genealogical roots as I build out and verify my family tree. That's something I've gotten into the last year. And that's something that I use to find connection with my parents. That relationship has been a strained one over time. And I found that that sort of brings us into a more neutral ground territory. And so other than that, as my children get older, my husband and I enjoy more challenging hikes and adventures and love of the outdoors. And we're planning our first backpacking trip this spring. So pretty excited about that.
Well, I love that. I love the passions and the interests that you mentioned and even how you're using genealogy to connect with your family. That's beautiful. So you have been a student of the Enneagram for many years, but you don't use it professionally. You're just a very curious person, and I think that's awesome. And so we're really just looking to have people on who are observers of their own lives. And you came to mind as a 5 who is that. So yeah, how long have you known about the Enneagram and maybe even attachment, if that's something you're familiar with? And what caused you to want to learn more about your patterns?
I discovered it around 2018. I was looking into other psychometrics, and a friend of mine brought up the Enneagram. And I read about it quickly. It's not something, that I really had a lot of time to put into it. I just had my 3rd child and I was working full time. So I just looked at some of the material and I was like, okay, yeah, type 5, easy. And so just kind of went about my business, didn't really pay too much attention to it. And just was working through some things in my life that were just, bringing me out of my focus. I could tell something wasn't quite right. So after I heard about type 5, I sort of like looked at it, put it down. And then as I started reading over time, I became, so interested in it that I trained as a coach. And then I started working with a life coach for me. And it's sort of one of my lowest points in 2020, which was kind of a low point for a lot of people.
Hmm.
The fear started really coming up and taking me out of my focus and really becoming unavoidable as an emotion. And then I thought, am I a six? Because they're just like so, and I was like, am I a six? And so, then I started, then I was in there with a life coach and the other sixes or other sixes. And I was like, I don't relate to their way of being. Something's not, there's, I was getting great information from the life coach as far as thought work, etc., feeling
Hmm.
emotions. And I was mainly in there to feel my emotions. I had never done that, like, which is kind of shocking, not in the way that she was doing it.
Hmm.
And I just knew that that was not my way of being. It was close, but it was not my way of being.
Hmm.
So then from that, I started to look more inward and stop focusing kind of more on teaching. And I saw the counter five very clearly once I started digging deep, as you do. And, just coming across, it was very obvious that I'm very sensitive, intense, feeling
Hmm.
forward, but really guarded. So the counterfight five, when I read that, I was like, yes, this explains everything perfectly.
Yeah.
So, and as far as attachment goes, I've read the book Attached, and I think I took some type of quiz in the collective. If you
Hmm.
remember, we took a quiz in
Yep.
there. And so that's kind of like the extent of what I know about it.
Hmm.
And I think it said I was like a disorganized attachment. Like
Okay.
it had your attachment with your family, and then I think it had it with your spouse. Remember on the test?
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah,
right.
right. And so with my family, it was very disorganized, but with my spouse, it rated me as secure. So
Yeah.
that's the
That's
extent of it.
great.
Yeah, I can't say that I know anything else about that, but I do feel like it can be a bit disorganized. It's a little bit more, I don't know, predictable now that I'm older,
Hmm.
but I can definitely see the disorganized, like almost doing pursuer as I was younger. And
Yeah.
then, when I didn't get what I needed, I would distance.
Right.
So like I would try different things to get my
Yeah.
needs met. And I could definitely see how that played out in my earlier life. But now I can, you learn about self regulation, like you learn about when the emotions come up, you learn what to do and like actually feel those, and it's not going to take you out.
Hmm.
Sometimes it takes me out because it's just overwhelming. It may take me out
Yeah.
for a day or something, but then it's kind of over.
Mm.
Um, but I learned that trying to avoid feeling actually takes you out a whole lot longer. Like if you want to take data on that,
Yeah.
look at how long it takes you when you're
Yeah.
trying to avoid a feeling versus just sitting with it. You're out a day or two and you're back not in the game, but back doing whatever it is you need to do.
Absolutely. And the way you describe the experience for you as a five is it's so common to have to want to like, bypass those emotions for fives and like you said, it takes so much more energy when you're trying to avoid it. I read a book called Energy Rising, and it's all about emotions and this idea of like moving through and emotions are energy in motion. And so if you don't let them pass, if you don't process them in your head and your heart and your body, like because the emotions affect all of it. And so doing that type of work, like I just find it fascinating that you put yourself into a group where the coaching practices were processing emotions to grow in that kind of repressed emotional space. Yeah.
Yeah, unknowingly, I was just sort of in there for whatever people had to bring,
Oh,
and
okay.
most of the things I had to bring were not processing emotions at all,
Yeah.
and competency stuff. all the problems I had were around that
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
So that was another clue.
That's amazing. I love that. And hearing about your attachment, that's really cool. And it brings up, I think we've talked about this very lightly, but that attachment styles can be different with different people. So you can be secure in your marriage and you can still have disorganized or what we call fearful avoidant patterns in your family of origin because of, developmental traumas like, a lot of disconnections or things like that occur that if they don't get healed or become secure in those relationships, they just kind of remain. But it takes more than just you. So I think
Yeah.
that's the challenging part. But the awareness to know, okay, this is what's happening, so good. Yeah.
But I
So
do
I'm
think that if I can add something, I do feel like, it does take more than just you in relationships. But if you're doing your work, that can also be a model for other people. Like, you don't sort of roll over and, take whatever they're dishing out. Like you can regulate yourself and you can keep yourself um from going back into that old pattern.
absolutely. Yeah, you can't wholeheartedly like shift everything. However, you can influence people, like you said, with modeling. And when you don't serve up the same patterns you maybe once did, like when you were a kid, like I think you mentioned anxious pursuing. And then if it doesn't work, you distance. When you shift, when you're aware of those things, you can shift them. And then you're able to bring more secure behaviors into the relationship. And healing at least becomes an invitation. They can
Yep.
decide how they respond then to those new patterns. Yeah. So I'm curious, your Enneagram 5 patterns look like at work.
My degrees are wildlife biology and I have a master's in forestry, so it's natural resources related. And I had one class in grad school that was GIS. And that's what I ended up doing for a job. And we do work with all those types of data. We do coastal mapping for oil spill response is my primary job, but it could be, we have all sorts of different types of projects. And with that, so much of my job is really self taught and changes a lot of times because we could get any types of projects and you just need to figure it out. And with GIS, it's kind of more of a hands on learning tool for the most part. You can only learn so much, but it's just application. So it's a lot of trial by fire, and my incompetence gets triggered a lot. It's in the workplace, and it's just a nature of the work that I do. And so when I get stressed, I can tend to avoid asking for help or trying to figure things out on my own because that's just kind of like what you have to do anyway. But there gets to a point where you probably need to ask your cohort, your colleagues, you know, what they know about it, and just kind of put your ego out of it. Because that can cost the project time and money, and you need to sort of figure out that line. And so I do have some coworkers that model that extremely well, and I'm very happy to have them as mentors. They're older and they've been doing it for longer. And they're just like, well, I don't know. And I was like, that's amazing. They just say they don't know. I say I'm going to figure it out, but they say they don't know because I'm not ready to like give up. Like, I know I can figure it out if I have enough time, but that will cost the project money. So I work for a consulting firm and, you need to be billable most of the time.
Yeah.
So I know that the healthy space for me is like clear communication, collaboration, and just, asking for help if I need it and providing help, and leading the team when I need to. I'm not really in a leadership position, but when I need to be, I have noticed that, I'm decent at doing that and mentoring other people. I would actually prefer to sort of mentor versus lead, but that's kind of how it plays out in my work life. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting, you know, how you've paid attention to that trigger of incompetence, that feeling like you don't have all the information or you can't execute um, effectively or something.
I've
Yeah.
journaled about that a lot. So, like, it finally was like just sort of journaling, sort of comparing the different journal entries and analyzing those. Just like you analyze your feelings, or that's what I do anyway. And like, I'm trying to find like a common pattern.
Yeah.
That's
And
it.
I love that. I love that even the way that you analyze your own um, psychology and your own, personal work. You put things in categories and you sift through and distill like what are the common themes and like how do
Mhm.
I get past this stuck point or this challenge that I'm having, like is so very five, and it's beautiful. You're working with that to actually then grow past the limitations of just being in your five space.
Well, the
So
thought work gave like a really good structure. I like a good structure. I'm
yeah,
sure, probably other fives like that too. If you have the structure, you can sort of tease like, what is the thought that keeps, you have a bunch of thoughts. So I allow myself to sort of like complain a little in the journal. You got to, woe is me. And
yeah,
then I put it in the structure.
okay,
Like, what are the thoughts? Or what's the circumstance? Like, what is this thing that is irrefutable? And what's the thought that I'm having about it? Not all the thoughts. What's the main one that's bringing me so much angst? What is it?
yeah,
And so I write that down. And so that's kind of how I figured it out, is like putting it in a model after
yeah,
I allow myself to sort of complain.
yeah. I think if anyone's listening and they're like, I need a practice as a five to help with those stuck points, I feel like what you just shared, that journaling practice and what is the thought, because they're in the headspace, that is that sticky, it has some angst or it has some pain to it. What is that? And then kind of working with it, and what then emotion is tied to that thought, and then is there a physical sensation or is there a gut reaction or impulse to do something, and kind of I work with people with head, heart, and body always to integrate, but that practice for a five would be beautiful. So thank you.
Or what's the inaction?
Yeah, what am I trying to avoid?
Yeah, it's the actions or inactions.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about parenting and like family life. I know that for fives, just that feeling of like I lack resources to deal with the overwhelm of, it could be emotions, it could be just the energy you need to parent, the household stuff. How does that play out for you?
Um, it's much different now than it was in the beginning. So let me just say that. I have three children, one's 16, one's 14, one's 10. And I definitely felt super incompetent as a parent starting out with, for sure. And I felt like I could not ask for any type of help. And that has really changed, as time has went on and I've learned, these things. I really enjoy the self-improvement aspect. I've always read self-improvement books. My book list is strictly nonfiction, but most of the stuff I'm reading is like, how can I fix it on my own kind of stuff. And, so that has really helped over the course of motherhood. And then now it's important to note that I'm in the perimenopausal phase. No one wants
Hmm.
to hear. That is playing a role in regulation. I can definitely see that. That's definitely playing a role. And it's pushing me in ways that haven't been pushed before, but it's also causing me to do things that are a little bit more kind of help me in the long run. But I
Hmm.
would say overall, I kind of oscillate between needing time alone when I'm like overstimulated. And the other side of that is feeling like time is moving too fast and I want them to stay this age forever. I have a
Hmm.
16-year-old, she's almost a foot out the door. So I'm sure that that's pretty common among mothers. So, like I said, I felt like I couldn't ask for help whenever, I was younger. But now, being in connection, more connection with people, especially older parents. I have a friend who's about 10 years older. She's been wonderful because she has actually stepped out of the phase that I'm currently in And she's a wonderful sounding board for hearing what's going on and really just has walked through that. And that is so helpful to me, just the wise perspective of elder parents. Um, so
Yeah.
I think before I would, whenever I was younger, I would sort of not ask for help and push to my breaking point and then snap, go to that unhealthy 8 space.
Okay.
Um, then afterward, I would realize sort of what happened after I had some reflective time. But when I'm grounded and when I'm regulated, and in good headspace, I can give really intentional one-on-one time to the kids, and ask for my needs and not feel guilty for
Hmm.
taking time. And I think about where I am now versus where I was, as a younger parent, and I felt so guilty about walking away, not walking away, but like taking a little bit of time to myself. I felt so incredibly guilty. And now I look back at that person, I was like, I don't know how you could have felt that way. Not as
Hmm.
in a judgment way, but like it just feels like I'm two different people now that, it's just so helpful to take that time. Like it in no way translates into you being a bad parent. In no
Right.
way.
Yes. Yeah, I love how you've talked about that evolution of how it was and how it is now because, some people may be listening and they have like a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old, and just those younger years are so
Oof.
taxing. And the more kids you get, the more you start to
Mhm.
realize, okay, I need to recharge. This is exhausting. Every single new kid, because I have 5 kids. So it was just like
Yeah.
once they started to stack up, I'm just like, whoa.
You have a couple of them crying at the same time. I just remember feeling cuckoo, girl.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought I was gonna lose it. I was like, I can't do it all.
Yeah.
I gotta I gotta go away.
Right. I love to talk about this, especially Enneagram work, as a journey towards your true self. And when I hear you talk about then and now, whether it's in your marriage or as you learn to engage with your emotions or how you are as a parent, I hear that moving towards your true self, who God truly made you to be, and that you're recognizing and laying down false self patterns. So, if you were to, in a simple way, describe who you were and who you're becoming, how would you describe the two sides of that?
Um, I would say, um, who I was. I would say very, it feels like I can live mostly in a robotic, dutiful sort of, I'm doing the things that a mother should do. Like I'm doing
Hmm.
all those things almost in a robotic, automatic way without really much interaction. I'm in my head, I'm doing all those things.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how I lived my life was I'm just getting all these things done so I can finally, take some time to myself and get to that thing that I wanted to do
Hmm.
before. And I would say in a nutshell, that's kind of how it was before. But who I'm becoming is a person who is like a full person, allowed
Hmm.
to have that full human experience. It starts on the inside, but is allowed to coexist on the outside as well. Like I'm allowed to live outside of my body. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? I'm allowed outside of my head. If I feel, I'm becoming someone, if I feel strongly, I'll voice an opinion and ask for what I need. Um,
Yeah.
and in a conflict, not really abandon myself because I didn't feel like dealing with any drama or fallout. Um,
Yeah.
I'll think about something, and look into it a reasonable amount, which is key. Reasonable is the key word.
Hmm.
Then act on it, which is another
Right.
key thing. The action piece is big for me. It's the
Mm.
biggest one. So it's like embodiment. Um,
Yes.
And so, as I said before, well, connection is also a thing, like authentic connection with trusted people, not connection with every single person, not connection in big old groups, connection with the way that feels right to me, but
Hmm.
connection regularly without making it a big deal in my head. The little snippets of interaction. that you have with people. Like if you go to the mailbox and you see someone outside, you can wave or you can chat with them for a second. Doesn't have to be a long thing, but the more I do that, it greases the wheels for connection. And the more connection that I have, I feel like I'm more of a complete person, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like I'm including all those things that I was not really including before,
Yeah.
things outside of me. So
Yeah.
I would say it's comparative, like before and after is like I'm living mostly, I mean, it sounds selfish, but yeah, maybe in a more selfish way. And then now I'm including other people and I'm sharing what I have or what I know. And sharing what I have is also important. That resource guarding is a real thing. You know,
Yeah.
um, but then also just being there for people and being a good grounding, listening ear
Hmm.
has really, I think, benefited me just as much as the other person.
Right.
So,
Yeah. You know what I'm hearing so much of as you describe your journey towards wholeness is the harmony triad. You have accessed or learned to access both, which we haven't really taught about this on the podcast yet, but I want to, is the harmony triad for a five. They're part of the 2-5-8 triangle. And you talked about being able to use your voice and get into action. And, that's very eight. And you talked about connection and emotional awareness. And that's very two. And so, like, as a five, instead of being kind of hunkered down in your headspace and maybe withdrawn and a little less to action, you usually fives will research, like if they haven't done their work, it's the collecting data information but not doing anything about it or
yeah,
taking a really long time to
yep,
start. But you have seen how that has not been good for you and how you need to use your voice and move and do. You need to include other people and share resources and give love and affection and, and receive that also, So this is wholeness. This is integration. So that's amazing.
well, thanks for saying that. So podcasting and writing and all of those things that are passions, those are really expressions of that. They really do that for me. Like whenever I first started the podcast, I did have a prayerful sort of, you know, spiritual intuition, like I should use my voice for like a good reason. Not just be mouthy. I can be mouthy. Um, for sure. um, but 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 use it for like, bringing people together and showing people they're not alone and giving them a voice as well, letting
Hmm.
them know their voice. Everyone has a story. Everyone has something worth hearing about. And the more we each bring our own personal thing, I feel like that's just another connection piece that other
Yeah.
people can, so, someone out there will be able to catch on to. And I just think the big picture is people don't want to feel alone in this
Hmm.
world. And
Absolutely.
so, in whatever way you can show them that, I think is great through writing, podcasting, whatever it is.
Yeah. And you definitely have done that. I love listening to your podcasts and some of the guests that you've had on. You really draw out some really good information, good data from them, but it's in an authentic, like human connection type way. So I think that's amazing. You've talked a little bit about the withdrawn stance, so we don't necessarily need to talk more about that because you've highlighted the fact that 4, 5s, and 9s are in that sort of kind of going away and needing your quiet time to recharge. But let's talk a little bit about the arrows. I know it can be a surprise for some fives when they learn about, say, the 7 arrow in stress and how, that could look like uh, more energy or distraction or scattered, or it looks like more assertiveness. And that can kind of bump up against the natural patterns of the 5. So, what do you notice for you in either the 7 in stress or the 8 in security? What does that look like?
I think one of the easiest ways for me to identify if I'm in stress is the inability to focus.
Mhm.
I think that is a key thing for a 5. Like, you just get thrown off your mental game, which is
Mhm.
the strongest game that you have. So, just grabbing, like, if I don't know something at work, I'm thrown a project and I don't know what is going on, as an example. I'm going to feverishly research. I have 100 tabs open. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I'm just feverishly, like, trying to find information. And
Mhm.
there's never enough. I'm never sure about it. Like, this is a new thing. I'm not an expert in it. I could make a mistake. I definitely don't want to look like a fool or don't know what I'm saying. So just that inability to focus. Also, if something's going on in my life that is, distressing, I will look for that escape that distraction brings. I,
Mm.
it's time to go more into the family tree. It's time to read a new book. What kind of course can I take? Uh, Anything like that. And in really sad times, I've been reckless, not really caring as much about my safety as how I'll phrase that. Like, I've kayaked alone in an area that has gators. Didn't tell anybody where I was. I mean, like, right after
Yeah.
my miscarriage, like things like
Oh,
that. Just these are just examples, like, of some of the things that I've done. But the
yeah.
biggest thing is inability to focus. That's the biggest
Mhm.
thing of how I'm going into the low of 7.
Yeah.
But and then but on the flip side, I can access the high side of 7, like we all can
Yes.
do when we're in a good place. And
Mhm.
that will look like I'm, allow for more spontaneity, happy, I'm flexible, more flexible. That is a big thing. Is if I'm not flexible at all, then, and collaborative, then I know that that's probably not the best space.
Mhm.
I can be optimistic for sure. So, and that's a great point of connection with myself and my spouse because he's a 1. So we
Yeah.
really connect on the high of 7 really well. And so growth towards an 8, I share my inner world with other people. I'm stepping out. I'm allowing that to be okay for me to have a podcast. Who am I? I'm not, someone who's actually actively coaching at all. But you know what? It's free to do. You can do that if you want to
Yeah.
do that, like, that's my prerogative. Um, and with writing, like, I'm providing, that out into the world. And so with the podcast, I'm providing a calm atmosphere, listening to others, reflecting back to them with clarity, exactly what you're doing too. By the way,
Mhm.
you're doing a great job of that.
Thank
Um,
you.
and I coach people when they come to me, when friends, suggest, like, this person's having a hard time. Can you talk to them? I would be more than happy to. I'd be honored to connect with someone on a deep way because I am a sexual instinct. So I do love that deep conversation, but I will help someone. There's nothing I love more than an authentic conversation like that. And I think that's where you and I probably, it's the same.
Yeah.
Um, so I love that. I love being there for that person. And, I did struggle with that for a while, like being an Enneagram coach, I'm certified to actually coach people, but can I charge them? Do I want to do that? So I had that for a while that I had to sort of journal out and figure out what I wanted to do. But then I said, for now, I'm going to offer it as part of my spiritual practice. That's um, what I, what feels good to me right now.
Yeah.
And then also towards growth of the 8, moving toward conflict as necessary in relationships. And I don't enjoy conflict because it's not like I'm scared of conflict. Like I said before, I can be, and mouthy is not the high side of 8, but I will definitely speak my truth, um, and then help you see yours. But y- in relationships, like, you're gonna encounter things. Like, it doesn't have to be super dramatic either, but just speaking and, like, addressing the elephant in the room is going to cost you less energy than letting this thing play out, the same song and dance. Like, at
Yeah.
least say what it is. I'm not saying I
Yeah.
do that perfectly, but that's an example of the high of 8. Um,
Yeah.
and the low side of 8, like I said before, mouthy, temper comes through, overstimulated, gets shouty, demanding, for sure.
Mhm.
I have access to all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I have this map that goes on in my head. I'm pretty high in 5 now after I've leaned in. I used to be more 3. I just moving all over the place, but hearing you talk about, you know, your 7 and 8 and accessing the high sides of both of those and also recognizing at times you go to the low side, you know. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
the same is true for the harmony triads and your wings. And so if you look at for you as a 5, you have the 4 wing and the 6 wing, and then you have the 2 and the 8, and then you also have the 7 in stress. What's left is the 1, which actually brings us to your your husband's a 1. And so would that be a number that you would feel like you are low in because you don't have like a
Hmm.
access point to, or are you high in 1?
I'm high in 1. That's my second
Wow.
highest. And that's in my tri type. So I'm 514 in the tri
Mhm.
type. So those are just tri type, just the highest number in each of the centers.
Mhm.
Um, he and I really just come to the table with a very similar mindset, very
Okay.
similar, very little. I don't know, I wouldn't say we're a nonverbal relationship, but, I mean, a lot of times we can, just sort of, um, not really need to talk too much about it because we know where we're at.
Mhm.
I can read him, he can read me because we are very similar in that.
Mhm.
What's the most different are instincts. And I think that probably matters the most in our relationship than anything
Okay.
because I know instincts are kind of blowing up right now and people are writing books about it. And the thought is like this maybe matters more than your Enneagram type, especially in relationship. I would have to say, the
Mhm.
jury's out on that, but it does seem to matter the most for us.
Yeah. Well, and it's about safety, right?
Yeah.
That's your basic needs for feeling safe. It has to do with your instincts, which comes almost before personality patterning. And so that's why we talk about that being such an important pattern to identify, but it can change. And obviously the we have all 3. So the goal is to use all self-preserving, social, and one-to-one or sexual. Like we need them all. But so how does that play out like in your understanding of your dominant um sexual or one-to-one instinct, and then you said your husband's social, is that right? You
Hmm.
think? Okay.
I mean, it's just POV, right? So my POV is him, his POV is other people.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because when in the early stages of a relationship when you're doing that, there's names for it, but in the early stages, like when you're trying to get together
Yeah.
and there's a lot of bids for, whatever, a
Connection.
trick
Yeah.
connection or whatever, or a lot of pursuing.
Mhm.
Um, he definitely, I would say he definitely did the whole sexual instinct. It
Yeah.
seemed like that was high for him. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, finally I've met someone with that same level of intensity.
Right.
Because ones are intense.
Yeah.
Ones
Yeah.
can be intense.
For sure.
Um, I didn't know about Enneagram then, but I was like, oh, he was asking me, he's like, what's your sign? I was like, who are you? I didn't think like that would be coming out of his mouth. And like he would ask me really deep things. And I was like, okay, yes, this feels right. This feels right. But then after you're married and after you kind of settle in, right, over the course of your relationship, married or not, like that fades away and he's more like the POV is like, let me get to go together with my friends and like kind of putting like stuff for us on sort of more on the back burner. And I remember just being so confused by that for so long until I found out about the instincts. I was like, this makes perfect sense
Mhm.
because everyone would be activating because you obviously have all these instincts. I mean, it's not like
Mhm.
anybody is some type of, alien. And
Right.
that would be more activated in the beginning of the relationship. And so, but if that's not
Yeah.
your dominant, you're going to settle back into whatever it is that you were.
Yeah.
And so, even now, like I remember at our wedding, and that was like maybe 3 years in together as a couple. He asked, like we were going to drive to the Outer Banks for our honeymoon, and he asked his friends at the wedding if they want to come by and hang out at the house, and they were like, aren't you going on your honeymoon? You need to be with your wife. I remember being so mad. I was like, are you kidding me?
He's like, but it's a party. This is a
But
whole
it's
social thing. Like, I don't
exactly
understand.
that that should have been the clue then. I didn't know about that any of that then, but it really
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. It makes so much sense. But he's really concerned with, like, he'll tell the children to, like, when they go out, in public, your representation of the family, you need to act right. And I was like,
Hmm.
not that I don't really agree with that, but it's just like I wouldn't have thought about that
Yeah. It's not
to
your
tell.
first
Yeah.
point of connection or direction for what is important. You might be thinking what would be different when you go out in public with your kids.
Like when I go out in the public with my kids, like, I don't know, it's kind of hard because it's a sexual instinct. But like if I go out in public with my husband, I wouldn't think about like, don't embarrass us as a family or don't whatever. Not that he would, but
Yeah.
it would be, it might be like, rem- like, don't share what we have here with other people. Like that's
Hmm.
private to us. Don't
Oh,
share any
yeah.
personal information about me. I tell them that.
Hmm.
Don't share any personal information about me. But then also, what we have is like so different than what you have with other people. And
Yeah.
hopefully, what we have is bigger,
Yeah. Yeah. That desire for that intensity and that type of connection that is, you know, um,
special and unique.
very special. And it was interesting listening to a recent podcast with Krista Harden, who, we both know, and Russ Hudson. And he was talking
Yep.
about the instincts. And I don't know if you listened to that episode,
Yep. It was great.
but when he talked about the sexual instinct, he was talking about zest for life and
Yep.
sort of new experiences and things like that, how
Hmm.
important that is to someone with that dominant instinct. And I was like, that is so my husband. It's
Spot
me
on.
too. That's my second in the sequence, but I'm first self-preserving. So
Hmm.
um, it's so interesting. But we need that. We
Yeah.
all need new experiences. We all need to have our resources and take care of ourselves, and we all need our people. So.
Well, I mean, I think that keeps the spark, like
Mhm.
the sexual instinct,
Mhm.
because I hiked to the top of this mountain with my kids on Christmas break. And I was literally brought to tears, like how beautiful it was, how absolutely hard it was, which made it even more beautiful because I pushed myself beyond whatever limits I thought I had. And
Yeah.
that made it more special because I see what I'm about. It's almost like a testing ground for yourself. Like
Yeah.
you test it, you push it, and the payback is so much more, it feels
Mhm.
like it definitely, it gives you
Yeah,
something.
and it sounds like too, I mean, just you mentioned that you are the counter 5 and how that drawing out into new experiences and adventure and zest for life
Hmm.
is counter to the patterns of the natural Enneagram 5. So, do you feel a tension between those things sometimes, or you just think it's like a perfect balance?
No, I just think, yeah, of course I do have, tension between those because it's like, I feel like, do I have the energy for that, especially as I'm getting older? Like all these other things I want to do, but then there's just the undeniable urge to do that stuff,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know? It is just there.
Yeah. Because it
So,
just keeps you alive and feeling like, because I feel like if you more self-preserving type 5s probably spend a lot more time kind of in isolation and in their study and things like that. Whereas the the sexual instinct just takes you to new experiences and that adventure.
oh yeah.
Yeah. So let's move on a little bit to, if you want to share a little bit about your writing projects or your podcasting. So if,
Hmm.
you want to share what you've been working on.
Right now, I've sort of like put the podcast on sort of the back burner for a little while because that felt right. I felt like I had said everything that I kind of wanted to say for the moment. And for a while there, it was like the last season that I put out was mainly about life purpose. And that was something that would not leave me alone. So I was like,
Mhm.
I'm addressing this. I'm addressing this. I'm going to read about all the things. I'm going to have all the people on, and I'm going to really go deep on this
Mhm.
and then see how I feel. And, doing that and also getting back to something that I've always been drawn to is writing. I've always wanted to write a book. I've always wanted to get that information out there. I said, I'm going to give space for that. I'm going to have a writing process. I'm going to write every day. I'm going to light my candle, set my timer for 20 minutes, and I'm going to get this. I'm going to write things and not just journal and like bellyache to myself or try to analyze my head. I'm going to actually write. And so I've been doing that. And I'm sort of doing like a self taught, not a self guided writing course with Janice Ray. She's a nature writer. She writes creative
Mm.
nonfiction, and creative nonfiction is what I am, the most interested in. And I would say that that's pretty much what my writing is for the most part. I use writing as a way to be fully honest with myself and process my feelings too. It allows me to sort of dig into the folds of my brain where I might not have thought about how I felt before.
Mhm.
So if I don't have anything on deck to write about, I'll use a prompt. And like I said, light a candle, set a timer, and it takes me in places. It's almost like an out of body experience. It takes me to places that I wouldn't have necessarily went.
Mhm.
Um, I would say if I had to categorize it, my writing feels like part field notes, part personal reflection towards emotional embodiment. Um, I try to replay hikes, which is, that's like, I love nature. I love hiking, adventure. They redid the love languages, and I think they added adventure to it.
Mhm.
So that's like my highest love language. And that's where
Wow.
my husband and I connect, is when we can do adventures together. So hikes are very near and dear to me. They bring that embodiment, but it also kind of helps my brain work in a different way.
Mhm.
So I can sort of memorialize, the times that I've had with people I care about and add a little bit of meaning to it at the end.
Yeah.
Um, those writings are the most authentically me, and I'm very proud of those. Whether they do anything or not, I really don't care. That's not the purpose.
Yeah.
But it really helps all of this, it like goes through your arm and gets
Yeah.
onto the screen. It's the full circle for me.
Mm. And I think that that is at the heart of what we like to talk about here on the podcast is just it sounds like writing is truly a process, a practice that helps you transform and integrate and discover places that maybe aren't in your conscious awareness.
Yes.
And so that I would really encourage anybody listening to go over to your Substack. We'll link it in the show notes, just to experience some of the way that Katy sees the world, the way that she, talks about nature and some of her other things. It's just I think that as we wrap up the the question of what is something you're practicing right now that's leading you towards transformation? I'm not answering it for you, but that sure seems like one of them. But is there anything else that you're doing right now that is continuing to help you transform?
I would say in the big picture, it's embodiment. Now, however that looks like, that is writing is a part of embodiment, but I would, listen to podcasts of fives and, read books. And it just seemed the common thread was sort of embodiment of some sort, working out. I've been in I've always like, been, hiking and things like that. But if you're not doing it regularly, it's not the same.
Hmm.
So I've been going to the gym for over 2 years now, every morning, most mornings. And I used to balk at like working out around people. I don't need that. I can just walk in my neighborhood. I love to be in nature. I'll walk outside. But that consistent practice and that promise to yourself, um, no matter what it is, and then followed by, sitting in the sauna for like 10, 15 minutes and
Hmm.
allowing some of my contemplative practices to be in there.
Hmm.
Um, And also, I will say back to about the little snippets of connection with people, it's another opportunity for connection without it being awkward. No one's in there trying to have a really long conversation.
Right.
Everyone's out of breath. The gym I go to, people are on the struggle bus. You got knee braces. I mean, it's older people.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is not Planet Fitness. Not
Right.
nothing against Planet Fitness, but
Right.
this is an older crowd. They're, cops and stuff like that. And so people, are just in there being people. You can have a short conversation, if they initiate it or you can initiate it.
Hmm.
And everyone's in there working on themselves. So it is a positive environment
Yeah.
and encouraging environment. And you're having little connections with people. Just all of that has been so good for me. I was like, of all the stuff I've done, I think this has been one of the biggest pieces. Then I can
Hmm.
come back and write. Then, but it's like getting some of that, like you said before, that stored energy on the inside out. So good for fives. So
Mm.
good. So
Yeah.
getting more and more active has, shown me that I was not, my numbers are okay in labs, everything is fine, but I wasn't as healthy, didn't
Right.
have the energy, 46 years old, sitting in a desk for 8 hours a day every day. Like you're getting stiff, you're not moving your body
Right.
and you're all in your head. Probably not the best
Hmm.
combo. But now that I've gotten more, healthier, I'm doing more stuff with my kids. I'm, actually allowing all of that. It's just really kind of snowballed into all good things, all good
Yeah.
positivity things. Just increase my, self confidence and my social confidence, which is something that I
Hmm.
struggle with. Social confidence.
Hmm.
And, I'm also able to contribute more to my family. Just sometimes I would just let things sit and not do some of the housework because I just didn't have the energy, like truly didn't have it.
Yeah.
But now I can feel my body being more energized and replenished after that. So embodiment, word of the year, word of the last 2 years,
Yeah.
in any shape or form has really helped me. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, I have it figured out.
Right.
Please. I mean,
It's a
be real.
practice.
Well, be real. That's not what it is. But yeah, it's a
Hmm.
practice. So I think that's the biggest thing that I've seen change in me personally.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so great to hear that that is because these are the types of things that I'm encouraging fives that I coach to, engage with doing and finding practices and rhythms, because you can get so locked into the headspace and just instead of actually feeling your feelings, like just thinking about your feelings or,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of bypasses that can happen and that you've learned like, nope, there's no bypassing. Like you have to move through. And and as you talk about contemplative practices and the way you just kind of live in the world, I learned maybe 4 years ago about the word embodied faith and has been on this journey myself through soul care work and things like that to just what does it look like to not just know God in my head, but to experience him in my physical being. So has that been part of your embodiment also?
Absolutely. I don't talk a lot about spirituality, but yeah, I mean, definitely. That's one thing, just kind of growing up, the way I did. Not that it was, anyway, it was just a way of growing up, is what I'll say. There was some trauma, lots of trauma. And I always felt like God was there. And
Hmm.
I just don't know who I would have become if I didn't have that
Hmm.
faith. My faith has been tested in different parts, and there's times when I have been away from my spirituality, just out of shame and such, and always came back and, accepted the gift of grace
Hmm.
and kind of came back to it and I'm able, once you can give yourself grace, you can give grace to anyone. And, just having and I don't really know how I don't experience spirituality through my head at all. Not at
Hmm.
all. I don't want to read about it, don't want to not that I don't wanna, like, read things that are helpful, but I don't want to intellectualize it because that is a bypass for me, 100,000%. I have to feel it in my heart. I have to show it to
Yeah.
other people, like the embodiment that you're just talking about. I have
Mm-hmm.
to hold space for people who are grieving, that's why I use, the coaching as a means of, like, as my,
The service or ministry or
yes,
yeah.
yes, ministry, personal ministry.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I view it as, is because I feel like that's one thing I can offer. I'm a good listener, and I can
Mm,
reflect back to you, and I think that's kind of the most of it. I mean, I may not a therapist or counselor or anything like that, but
yeah.
I can be another human being who cares about you and listens to you, and that's what
Right.
most people, I think, need.
Yeah.
Um, so, like, that's a way that I kind of, I feel like embody my spirituality,
Yeah.
and the way that my spirituality and faith kind of connect with, like, nature and personality, like, all the things that I care about they're actually interconnected. Um, because when I'm in nature, I have, like, intense feelings that sort of run deep and make me very emotional. And in the same way, I like to connect deeply with humans through, like, a deep, meaningful conversation, like what we're having right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I connect nature and humans to the creator. Um, and I just am very, it brings me to positivity. It makes me eternally grateful for the world, and that I can experience it through unending curiosity, sort of wonder, gratitude. Nature is expansive, and it's hard to get a handle on intellectually, um, like we are as humans.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think having a system and basic understanding, like we do for classifying, like, plants and animals, like from general to specific, like kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, that
Mm-hmm.
is the way we're taking the broad and putting it into something that our brains can manage, such as the psychometric tools like
Mm-hmm.
Enneagram, NTBI, DISC, all of those things. So I
Yeah.
think it kind of helps. It's all intertwined for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Yeah.
so very grateful for, I know things can feel scary and can feel overwhelming in the world, but
Mm-hmm.
at the at the big picture of it, at the very core, um, I'm very grateful for what God has. I'm grateful He's given me the brain that He's given me and the way of being He's given me, because I can really experience a lot of joy and gratitude, um,
Mm.
from it, because I'm thinking about it in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hear that too, just that you've said um, grace and gratitude several times in this conversation. I just think it's beautiful that you've landed there, that you really live that and embody it. So,
I mean, I can
um,
definitely get cynical for sure. I mean,
mhm.
such is the way of a five, but
Yeah.
I'm always, when I ground myself into things that just like I said, the things that do bring me joy, a deep conversation with someone or in
Hmm.
nature, I'm brought back to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this has been a really wonderful conversation, and you are at the top of the list of exceptional humans that I
Thank you.
happen to know. So I'm so glad that you agreed to share your story and your patterns with us. I think it's going to really benefit a lot of people. So
You're
I like to.
excellent at this. So
Oh, thank you. It is it's something I love to do for sure.
you're very
Um,
good.
Yeah. So we like to close every show with a blessing. So may you be aware and open to everything that comes to you today, welcoming it all for your transformation.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Transforming Us podcast. We hope that you enjoyed the conversation and that you found it helpful. If you loved what you heard, we would really appreciate if you would take a moment and leave us a 5-star review and rating. Your support helps us reach more listeners like you.
And also, don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more relationship content. Then, if you're looking to take your growth to the next level, check out our coaching services and groups at transformingus.org.
We're here to help you transform your patterns and enjoy more secure relationships.
Until next time, in the words of Raoul Shane, you do not need to do big things. Just do small things in a big way. Then transformation will follow you.